Mixing is both an artistic and technical skill that has evolved dramatically over the last 100 years.
This is where we'll do the main stereo mixing. So I see everybody's DAW sessions from the top producers in the world. I think like an extremely important concept is...
That's Jeff Ellis. He's a Grammy award-winning mixer who has mixed some of the biggest records of today.
Working with Frank, I did an album with Caliucci's. There's with The Neighborhood, Doja Cat, Joji, Omar Apollo, JPEG Mafia.
Mixing music used to be a highly specific skill that was only possible if you were at a commercial facility that had extremely expensive equipment that was also rare and highly limited compared to today's standard, where almost anyone who has a laptop is able to mix a hit record. This technological change has not only opened the door for nearly anyone to be able to learn and develop their skill as a mixer, but it has dramatically changed the mixing process, putting a huge emphasis on using a screen. Jeff has invited us into his mix studio at the world-class East West Studios, where he's going to show us his approach to mixing using what he calls the split station setup.
This is laid out in such a way that I call a split station setup. When we're locked into computer brain, and we're looking at the screen, like our whole, whatever part of our brain is processing visual data, it kind of clamps out or crowds out the creative part of your brain, right? So imagine I had Pro Tools here, and if I'm like mixing this way, I'm like looking at the sound, and it's just like, you know, night shift where the screen gets red all of a sudden? So you're like mixing, you're on Pro Tools, your back is hunched and you're like deep in your mix, and then the whole screen kind of goes red because it's night shift time. It blocks out the blue light so you can sleep better. And then all of a sudden it seems like your mix changed, right? So that's the first time I was like, wait a second, my eyes are really influencing everything way too much. And it's the same way, every single plugin advertisement that you see on Instagram nowadays will have like the before in black and white, and it's like before, and then they unbypass and the after, and all the colors come back, and it gets louder and brighter, and like, this is, eye shenanigan influences what you're hearing so much, and it's not a little bit, it's massive. So how do we get around that? Well, split station setup. So now we have to use computers all the time. I spend a lot of time in computer world, like hunched over doing my thing. However, when I started to work in this world of production, and now this is music, right? And then I come out over here and all of a sudden I'm conducting this thing, and you feel that pressure in your brain, whatever the, I don't know, the visual processing part of your brain is, relaxes, and then the creative part of the brain takes over. It's the same way as like, if you close your eyes, all of a sudden you start hearing music. So there are some screens here, but this isn't enough visual feedback to really like mess with that too much.
Now, the concept of a split station setup isn't exactly new. Both Jeff and I came up working at East West as assistant engineers, and you would see in most commercial studios, they will have a big, large format console in the room with the speakers on the meter bridge, and then you would have a side table, which generally would hold the computer controls, keyboard, mouse, and computer monitor. The big issue with the setup like this in all of the commercial studios is the engineer who is operating the computer is just getting audio in one ear, therefore putting more of an emphasis on what we're seeing than what we're actually hearing and experiencing and making those musical decisions. So one of the things I love about how Jeff approached it was actually setting up a second set of monitors with something he calls a neutral reference position in both spots.
So the fact that you just set up another set of speakers in computer mode, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense.
And they're all EQ'd to be neutral reference, so it all kind of sounds the same. So I'm here, and boom, boom. And even though these are kind of smaller, these could be the same speaker. These can just go a little bit louder because they're bigger, but every speaker, and even the JBL M2s that I just got, which are dope, they're all calibrated to be neutral. So they're all, it's not like a different world. You ever like, you're mixing on like NS10s and you feel like you're in one world, and then you go to like a Genelec or something completely different, and you're like, nothing makes sense in my soul anymore, and you're like, it's like, what am I doing? And then like because the NS10s were super bright, that makes the Genelec sound super dull, but when you're on the Genelecs for a while, they're like not as brightness, they have way more bass, and you go back to the NS10s and it's like, you're just like going crazy all the time. I'm just like, one pair of speakers, neutral reference, let's go. The whole ending phase of my mixing is getting everything out here on trim automation and touch, and then now we are kind of like automating out a mix, and it seems like a little like old hat to be like, oh, you need the faders and the this and that, and then people think about like the faders in the console as like some like analog thing, and it, like the analog is making it better, whatever. I don't really buy into that. I think having the console is what enables you to get out of visual brain and go into creative brain, into your feeling brain. And it's something that you have to experience to really know how important it is. The whole first 70% of my career, I was locked in the brain and like the mouse, and you're mixing with my eyes and stuff. And this is an Avid S4. And this is by far the best decision I ever made in terms of mixing. And it doesn't color the sound at all. This is just a controller for Pro Tools, right?
Hey everyone, my name is Cole. I'm currently editing this video, but I'm hiding in the mic locker to tell you guys something super important. Currently, only 30% of you guys are subscribed to the channel. And Andrew told me that if we can get that number up to 50%, that he'd buy me micro mains off of Sweetwater. Now these monitors are like $11,000, so there's no way I would ever be able to afford them. So if you love me and you love my family, please subscribe to this channel. I really want micro mains. That's it. Bye.
I can get the whole mix down to a couple faders. And then even things like I can't set a reverb if I'm looking at the plugin or whatever. So anything that I press in here, like if I pressed a fader right there, that'll map to this knob right here. And now I can just, or I can have a reverb return and I set the level not looking at a screen. You'd be shocked. Like if you mix a song entirely with a mouse and keyboard and then entirely without looking at a screen, those will be two wildly different mixes. Even setting reverb levels or delay levels, the level of a guitar solo, even the way that you EQ things, massively different if you don't have any visual feedback. So yeah, it was a huge level up. And you're probably thinking, Jeff, like so many of the top mixers nowadays like don't use anything like this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, they would all be better if they did. And that's crazy, right? To think that's crazy. But there's a reason why the old goats, like Tom Elmhurst and seeing like Manny, like they haven't gone entirely in the box. And I think it's because like they can't be creative without this system, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's about analog versus digital. I think it's a workflow thing, and I think it's a feeling brain thing. The problem is though, Andy, when I don't have a setup like this, I can't function. You know what I mean? So in my home studio, I have this setup, but you can duplicate this. This is like insanely expensive. Yeah. And I needed a business loan to pay this off and everything. However, you can do a version of this for much less expensive.
This whole setup is kind of mind-blowing for me, and as someone who got to sit in Jeff's room and listen in both positions, it was very confusing and very trippy to have the same experience in two different spots. And I'm a huge believer that the visual part of the screen in the mixing process has a negative influence on both the choices that you make as well as the time that it takes to make good mixing decisions. Now, obviously having two different setups is going to be a more expensive endeavor. In Jeff's setup, he is using an Avid S4, which is like a $40,000 to $80,000 fader control setup to be able to do automation. There's much more affordable ways to go about this. I will link some different fader controller options that you can try. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button because later this year, I'm gonna go to Jeff's home studio where we're gonna see how he replicated this setup at his home studio only using Avid S1s, which are another option that are much more affordable for doing fader automation and mixing in the session in the box. I'll put those links down underneath this video. Those will take you to Sweetwater, who are sponsoring this video.
I have a whole chapter in Mixer Brain about the split station setup and how important that is to my thing.
Wait, what's Mixer Brain?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Andy. Wow. Okay, so it's ugly out there. So remember how I was talking about like I get DAW sessions from everybody? I'm not getting stems. So I see everybody's DAW sessions from the top producers in the world to indie people, up and comers, and it's a disaster, okay? And why is it a disaster? Well, they're all really creative. They make amazing songs, but everybody's learned, myself included, to some extent, off of YouTube and these things you subscribe to, where the people go through what plugins they put on the songs that they mixed, and everything's being taught off of YouTube. And what ends up happening is everybody's getting way too focused on, like, you imagine a painter getting way too focused on the paintbrush and not enough at the canvas, right?
Right.
Engineers are so focused on the paintbrush. Like, imagine if a painter was called like a paintbrush engineer or whatever. That's like so goofy, right?
Yeah.
But everybody is so obsessed with their tools. And then all of these tools that are sold to us by default almost makes everything louder and brighter and louder and brighter. And I have this principle that I call the Riptide principle that I teach about in this course, but like we're so drawn to louder and brighter that we spiral out of control into these death spirals. And one of my things is just like reject the chain mindset, but I'll get these vocal chains that have like 15 plugins on a vocal, and every little element of emotion is completely removed from it. It's like, we all know how corny it sounds if you take a MIDI piano and you just put all the velocity to like 127, there's no change in the velocity and all the notes are at the same volume, and all of a sudden it sounds super corny. Well, that's like the same thing you're doing when you have 7 compressors on a vocal. All the nuance and changes in volume and emotion just get stripped out, and you just have this like dead and lifeless performance. And that's focusing way too much on the paintbrush and not enough on the canvas. So the course, I had to make this thing because it's gotten to the point where almost everything that's sent to me is like in such a bad place. It's like depressing. And I've been bitching about it for years. And I'm like, okay, I need to stop bitching and see what I can do to help fix this. And that course is called Mix Your Brain. And it is a principle-based approach. There's no like techniques and tips and tricks. It's all principles of why you're using the paintbrush and trying to return everybody back to the canvas. So
Yeah.
Mixer Brain is a bad thing. The name of the course is Mixer Brain, and that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah.
But the Mixer Brain
Yeah.
is bad. I want to get everybody back to the feeling brain. And the good news is it's just going to make everything way easier for you, because you're going to start acting out of emotion and art again, instead of just like applying tricks and plugins and tools and all this stuff. And once you master these principles, the tools that you have been using, you'll start applying them in a much better way. But I'm not seeing any of this stuff on these people that are trying to teach mixing or whatever on YouTube, though the Andy Masters channel is legit.
Jeff shared all of this with me in his full studio tour, which I have posted on my other channel. But do me a favor and let me know how you like to mix, whether you prefer to have the screen right up front or you think you would be interested in getting it a little bit out of the way to make some automation decisions. I'd love to hear your opinions. Also, if you're in the process of setting up your own studio and you have some questions, you can go to my website and schedule a consultation call with me. One of my favorite things is helping other people who are building out their dream studios consult through the process so that they can learn from the 20 years of me doing it and making mistakes and just skip all those mistakes right in the beginning. So you can schedule a call at my website, andrewmastersmusic.com. If part of your goal is to set up a hybrid studio setup, then click this video right here to learn what to do.